In 1993, Sophie Colombi was born in the quaint alpine village of Saint-Julien-Montagny, France. Surrounded by peaceful scenery, she spent her childhood there with her parents and two older brothers. From a young age, she was drawn to music, performing in the local village ensemble, while also nurturing a dream of traveling the world. After completing her schooling, Sophie moved to Denmark to pursue international business studies, followed by an internship in Germany. In 2013, she secured admission into a master's program at Griffith University in Brisbane, Australia. Sophie relocated to Brisbane with her boyfriend, and together they rented an apartment close to the university. A year later, his visa expired, forcing him to return to France, while Sophie still had another year left to complete. Though she briefly considered leaving with him, she ultimately chose to remain and finish her degree. To support herself, she took on several part-time jobs, waiting tables, cleaning, and even tutoring French privately. Despite her efforts, her income wasn't enough for her to live alone, so she moved in with fellow students who shared an apartment. On the morning of March 27, 2014, 21-year-old Sophie left for university as usual, with classes scheduled late into the evening. She exchanged messages with her boyfriend throughout the day, but suddenly stopped responding later that evening. By the next morning, there was still no word from her, leaving him increasingly worried. After repeated failed attempts to reach her by phone, he checked the Brisbane Police Department's social media page, hoping to find any news. While scrolling the police department's page, he came across a new post featuring photos of women's jewelry, with authorities asking the public for help identifying the owner. The instant he saw the images, dread set in. He recognized them at once as Sophie's. He quickly contacted the Brisbane police and explained what he had seen. That's when officers revealed what had happened. Earlier that morning, a homeless man who stayed in a park near Sophie's apartment had alerted police. He had spotted someone lying on a bench, covered in old newspapers as if trying to stay warm. Initially, he assumed it was just another person sleeping rough, but as he approached, he realized it was a young woman. He attempted to wake her, shaking her shoulder and calling out, but she didn't respond. Then he noticed blood tangled in her hair. Checking for a pulse and finding none, he rushed to the police. Officers soon confirmed the woman was dead and sent her body to the medical examiner. The autopsy revealed that Sophie had suffered a severe head injury caused by a heavy object, which proved fatal. She also bore multiple abrasions, and evidence confirmed she had been sexually assaulted. Investigators determined that the attack had taken place only a short distance from the bench where she was later discovered, after which her attacker dragged her body there and covered it with newspapers, likely in the hope she would go unnoticed. In that particular park, the plan was tragically effective. The area was a common gathering spot for the homeless, and it wasn't unusual to see someone sleeping on a bench. Medical experts concluded that the assault had occurred the evening before, but Sophie had not died immediately. She remained alive for several hours, slowly fading on the bench late into the night. Had anyone called for help, doctors might have been able to save her. Instead, passers-by assumed she was just another homeless person resting in the dark. After sending Sophie's boyfriend a photo of the victim and receiving confirmation it was indeed her, detectives launched a full-scale investigation. Their first priority was to locate her missing clothing and personal items, since she had been found wearing only jewelry. Despite thoroughly searching the park and every nearby trash bin, no trace of her belongings surfaced. Investigators then began reconstructing Sophie's final day in detail. CCTV footage captured her leaving her apartment that morning and boarding a bus to the university, where she spent most of the day. Around 8:30 p.m., as rain began to fall, she left campus. A classmate offered her a ride, but Sophie declined, saying she would take the bus instead. Cameras recorded her boarding and later disembarking at her usual stop. From there, she would have needed to cross a bridge over the river to reach home, but the route required her to first pass through the same park where she was later found. Beyond that point, no further footage existed to show what happened. Detectives appealed to the public for information, but few people had been out in the storm that night, giving the killer an ideal opportunity to strike in the isolated park unnoticed. Authorities also urged residents to watch for any of Sophie's missing belongings. At the time of her disappearance, Sophie had been carrying a phone, a tablet, an umbrella, and her handbag. When none of these items were found in the park, investigators deployed divers to search the river. Not long after, an umbrella was recovered about a mile downstream, though it couldn't be definitively linked to Sophie. News of her murder quickly spread throughout Brisbane, drawing significant concern for two major reasons. First, police admitted they could not rule out the possibility that the attacker might strike again. Second, Sophie's death marked the fourth murder of an international student in Brisbane within a matter of months. Even though the other cases were unrelated and the perpetrators had already been caught, the city began to sense a troubling pattern, fueling public unease. Meanwhile, detectives combed through extensive surveillance footage from around the park, reviewing hours of recordings. Eventually, they spotted a man walking past the park both before and after the estimated time of Sophie's death, a timeline narrowed down almost precisely thanks to earlier camera footage of her movements. What raised further suspicion was not only his repeated presence near the scene but also the fact that he never came forward, despite numerous police appeals urging anyone in the area that night to contact them. Despite the heavy rain that night, dozens of people contacted police to say they had passed through or near the area, yet not one of them identified the man from the footage. Investigators tracked his movements through cameras, which showed him entering a subway station near the park and riding a few stops before the trail went cold. They suspected he might have been heading toward the airport's train station in an attempt to leave the city. Detectives returned to the park to speak with locals who spent much of their time there, hoping someone would recognize him. Before long, a witness came forward, claiming he had been drinking with the man on the night of the murder. He said the man's name was Ben, and that he had been staying at a homeless hostel a few miles away, across the river. The hostel already had a notorious reputation, often housing recently released prisoners with no other place to go. Police visited the hostel and showed staff the surveillance photo. They immediately identified the man as 25-year-old Benjamin Millward, one of their residents. Disturbingly, staff added that Benjamin hadn't been seen since the night Sophie was killed. He had abruptly disappeared, leaving behind nearly all his belongings as if he'd fled in a rush. With this information, investigators made locating him their top priority. 8 days after the murder, they released his name and photo publicly, appealing for help in finding him. Further digging into his background revealed a troubling history. Back in 2012, Benjamin had been released from prison, where he had been serving time for assault. Not long after his 2012 release, Benjamin was arrested again for violating parole and only regained full freedom in 2013. His record also included theft, drug-related charges, and several minor offenses. While questioning other hostel residents, investigators learned more troubling details. One resident said that just hours before Sophie's murder, Benjamin had been extremely drunk and high, even admitting he hadn't used in a long time because the last time had gone badly. Another resident recalled seeing him in the park around 5 p.m., taking another dose. They later parted ways because the resident needed to return before the hostel's 9 p.m. curfew, but Benjamin never came back. That same witness later spotted him outside the hostel around 11 p.m., after the murder, and said he appeared anxious, disturbed, and was behaving oddly. Meanwhile, as police searched for leads, Benjamin's family and acquaintances came forward. Every one of them insisted he wasn't capable of murder. His family said they hadn't heard from him since Sophie's death, and they even appeared on television, pleading for him to come forward and clear his name. Still, Benjamin remained silent, reinforcing detectives' belief that he had fled the city. Authorities circulated his photo and details across neighboring towns and states, hoping someone would notice him. Before long, staff at a small hotel in Ballina, located in another state, reported that a man matching his description had stayed there for a few days but had already left. Police quickly alerted nearby towns, warning that he might be passing through. Soon after, 2 officers in the coastal city of Coffs Harbour spotted a man on the street late at night who looked just like him. When they approached and asked if he was Benjamin, he calmly replied, Yeah, you got me. Is this because of the internet? He was immediately arrested and extradited to Brisbane. DNA testing later confirmed that his genetic material matched the skin cells found beneath Sophie's fingernails, definitively linking him to her murder. Once Benjamin was taken into custody to await trial, his lawyer addressed the media, saying his client felt overwhelmed by the intense pressure of the case but was otherwise doing fine. In court, Benjamin did not attempt to deny his actions. Instead, he openly admitted to the murder before the judge and even asked Sophie's family for forgiveness. Then he shared a shocking detail. After attacking and assaulting Sophie, he told her he was going to get help, but instead, he simply walked away, abandoning her to die alone on that park bench in the pouring rain. Before fleeing Brisbane, he also disposed of her belongings by throwing them into the river. When questioned about his motive, Benjamin claimed he had not been in control of himself, blaming the drugs he had consumed. He insisted he remembered very little of the attack, only fragmented pieces of what happened. Experts, however, strongly doubted his explanation. They clarified that the substances he took would not typically provoke such a violent and calculated crime, nor would they cause the level of memory loss he described. Furthermore, investigators noted that Benjamin was lucid enough to purchase train tickets and leave the city without raising suspicion, contradicting his claims of being completely impaired. Ultimately, Benjamin was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving at least 20 years. He also received an additional 15-year sentence for the sexual assault, to be served concurrently. This meant that, given his age, he could still be released before turning 50. After the verdict, Benjamin's mother spoke to reporters, commending her son for confessing and attributing his actions to drug use, insisting he would never have committed such a crime while sober. Although the case was resolved relatively quickly, the impact on Brisbane was long-lasting. In the wake of Sophie's death, residents demanded greater security in the park and criticized the hostel for housing anyone, including violent ex-offenders and convicted killers. Many women came forward with accounts of harassment in the same park, saying they had never once seen a police presence there. Vigils were held across the city, with over 2,000 people participating in a candlelight march along the path Sophie should have taken home that night. Her funeral was held in her hometown in France, drawing nearly 1,200 mourners from a village of only 1,500 residents. It became the largest funeral the village had witnessed in decades, not since the passing of a beloved mayor. The turnout was so overwhelming that 8 condolence books were completely filled with messages of sympathy. If you found this case intriguing, make sure to like and subscribe. We upload new crime case videos every night. Stay tuned and brace yourself for what's coming next.